Hello, everyone. I am excited to get back into our Sermon on the Mount series. After 9 messages on the Sermon on the Mount, I took a break for the summer for our new baby season, and then there's the High Holy Days, and one thing after the next. But here we are. I'm excited to start again. If you'd like to catch up, those earlier messages are on the website in a Sermon on the Mount series page. We're actually re-recording this message today because we had a glitch in the recording on Shabbat, and I wanted to make sure that we had a complete message series on the website. So, let us go back to the hill overlooking the Sea of Galilee. You are a disciple who has followed Yeshua up the hill to hear his teaching. You have found a rock in the tall yellow grass and lean against it. You have a great seat. You can see Yeshua standing by the tree some distance away, his arms outstretched as he passionately speaks to the crowd, now in thousands, stretching down the hill on all sides. Repeaters stand down the hill echoing Yeshua's words to those further down. It was a beautiful day. Something about this day told you that it would be remembered for centuries to come. Yeshua paused, long enough for the echoes to fade and murmurs about his words to still. And for a few moments, you could hear the birds singing and the wind whisper over the grasses of the field, so that the hill itself seemed alive. The sea looked like it was covered with diamonds sparkling in the sun. Your thoughts return to Yeshua's words. Ashrei, truly happy are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. You are the salt of the land of Israel, the light of the world. Do not think that I come to abolish the Torah, but to fill it full with meaning. Do not even be angry with your brother. Do not even lust in your heart. Remember, God made marriage holy. Let even your yes be yes, and your no, no. Everyone seems to hear Yeshua's words as if he were speaking directly to himself. And you wonder, perhaps it was like this for our ancestors when we heard the Torah given to us at Mount Sinai. A baby behind you starts to fuss as her mother wraps her tight in a blanket so that she can hear. And Yeshua is moved and continues to speak. You have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And yet I tell you, do not resist an evildoer. But whoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him also the other. And the one wanting to sue you and take your shirt, let him also have your coat. And whoever forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. We are in Matthew 5, verses 38 through 42. And these are some of Yeshua's most challenging words, are they not? Victor Hugo's Les Miserables interprets these verses for us in action. Jean Valjean is put in a work camp for decades after stealing bread to feed his family. He escapes hardened and bitter. He is taken in by Bishop Myriel, but he leaves in the middle of the night, stealing the silver from the bishop's home. Later, the police bring Jean Valjean and the silver back to the bishop and ask, "Are these yours?" The bishop says, "Ah, yes, I gave them to him. And you also forgot the silver candlesticks. Let me go get them." It begins a spiritual renewal and transforms his life. It's a beautiful scene. I've wondered, what exactly does Yeshua mean with these provocative words? If you're sued, give even more than what you're sued for? If someone steals your iPhone, offer them the earbuds to go along with it and say, "Oh, I forgot the charger. Let me go get it." Let's dive in and see if we can unpack these verses. To begin, we need to understand the Torah he quotes from. Yeshua says, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth." This is written in 3 places in the Torah: Exodus 21:24, Leviticus 24:20, and Deuteronomy 19:21. Each has its own context, but Leviticus summarizes the principle well. If anyone injures his neighbor, as he has done, the same is to be done to him. Fracture for fracture, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Just as he has injured someone, so it shall be done to him. Exodus adds hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, blow for blow. Gandhi was attributed with the saying, "An eye for an eye will make the whole world blind." In the Fiddler on the Roof, after they hear they must leave Anatevka, a villager says, "We should defend ourselves, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth." And Tevye said sarcastically, "Very good. That way the whole world will be blind and toothless." While these quotations are a clever critique, they actually reflect a common misunderstanding of this principle in the Torah, that an eye for an eye means to take revenge. This misunderstanding comes from an early Roman use of lex talionis. Lex talionis is Latin for law of retaliation, the principle that the punishment for an offense should be equal to the severity of the crime. Rome's law code, the 12 Tables, applies lex talionis like the Torah. If a man broke another's limb, the victim could inflict the same injury upon the wrongdoer. The difference was that in early Roman law, the injured party had the right to personally inflict punishment without involving any formal court system. Lex talionis became a license for revenge. When we read the Torah in this light, it seems like Moses is requiring revenge and ensuring that no one gets away with anything, just like Rome. And if we understand Moses this way, then we might think Yeshua is now replacing the old harsh law, an eye for an eye, with a new law of love and mercy. Do not resist and do not take revenge. Otherwise, wouldn't the whole world be blind? The problem with this reading is that the Torah also forbids taking personal revenge and is filled with love and mercy. It says in Leviticus 19:18, "You are not to take revenge, nor bear any grudge against the children of your people, but love your neighbor as yourself." Proverbs 20:22, we read, "Do not say, 'I will pay back evil.' Instead, wait for the Lord, so that he may deliver you." In Exodus, God is merciful and compassionate, and we are to be the same. In context, an eye for an eye is not about revenge at all, but the opposite. It's intended to control and limit revenge. There are a few key differences in what the Torah actually says about an eye for an eye versus how it is interpreted through a Roman version of lex talionis. First, the Torah requires a judge to determine and administer the principle based on all the difficult circumstances. In the Torah, an eye for an eye is not an individual's right to personal revenge. It's a larger principle that a judge may use in a court setting to prevent violence from escalating. Second, while an eye for an eye would be brutal if taken literally, it's intended to limit the victim or his family from never-ending cycles of revenge. Rabbi Russ Resnick, in his book Divine Reversal, comments that while we might worry about legalism, or we might worry here about too much law, for most of human history, a greater problem was lawlessness, or too little law. He describes a series of interviews with women from an isolated tribe in New Guinea. Woman after woman, he says, when asked to name her husband, named several sequential husbands who had died violent deaths. A typical answer went like this: "My first husband was killed by raiders. My second husband was killed by a man who wanted me and who became my third husband. That husband was killed by the brother of my second husband, seeking to avenge his murder." This is an example of a people group with no limits on revenge. The tendency of human beings is not an eye for an eye, really. It's more like, you called me a name, so I'm going to kill you and your whole family. And this is what happened in our Parsha. Shechem defiled Dinah. So Jacob's sons went and slaughtered Shechem, not only Shechem, but his entire family, and not only his entire family, but all the men in the entire village, and took all the women captive and the children as well. I mean, this is just horrible. Unmitigated revenge does not stop. Rather, it produces a cycle of violence that might continue for generations until entire nations war with each other over their ancestors' unforgiven grievances. Consider Genesis 4:24. Lamech says, if Cain's death is avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times. This is an intergenerational cycle of revenge. And this is what the Torah is working to correct. Rather than initiating revenge, the Torah is creating a system to prevent the escalation of intergenerational violence. Consider when Yeshua is asked, how often should we forgive our brother when he continually sins against us? Yeshua says 70 times 7 times. He doesn't just mean 490 times. He means we forgive to undo Cain and Lamech's cycles of hate and violence in the world. Yeshua came to break this cycle of violence and hate. And thirdly, we have no evidence that these passages in the Torah were ever taken literally. First century historian Josephus says that disputes were resolved with monetary compensation in the first century. The rabbis of the Talmud, who often reflect Second Temple practices, universally understand these verses as meaning financial compensation rather than physical punishment. An eye for an eye means pay the monetary value equal to the damaged eye. And the reason our ancient rabbis felt this way was because no 2 limbs and no 2 eyes are equal. The destruction of one could not actually be compensated by the destruction of the other. They use the example, if a blind man took out the eye of a man with sight, it would make no difference if the blind man lost his blind eye. Commenting on these verses, the Mishnah breaks down 5 categories where financial restitution needs to be made in the case of injury. So this is how they interpret these words, an eye for an eye. There are 5 areas where we need to make financial restitution. Damage, the damage done. Suffering, the suffering that the person experienced. The medical costs, the loss of time from work, and their loss of reputation. To summarize, the Jewish understanding of an eye for an eye was not about revenge or physical punishment, but about setting limits on revenge and alternatives to bringing peace. In fact, it establishes the principles in the justice system that we have in the United States today, which work towards peace and equality in society. Now, with this new understanding of an eye for an eye, what is Yeshua really saying? In our previous messages on the Sermon on the Mount, I've been calling this section Torah from the inside out. Earlier in the chapter, Yeshua says, I'm not here to abolish the Torah. Instead, I am here to fill it full. He's not asking his followers to depart from the Torah. He is asking his followers to live the Torah from the inside out. Torah says, do not murder. What's at the heart? Leviticus 19:18. Do not even hate your brother in your heart. The Torah says, do not commit adultery. Yeshua says, do not even lust in your heart. The Torah permits, even requires oaths at times, yet in your heart let your yes be yes, and your no, no. How can we understand an eye for an eye from the inside out? At the heart is to break the cycle of violence and hate in our world and to bring peace. You must be peacemakers for the sake of love. Yeshua's charge to us zeroes in on this mission in a provocative way. Yet I tell you, do not even resist an evildoer. Do not even resist an evildoer. What does he mean? How can we just stand by and do nothing? This isn't what he means. Yeshua now gives 3 practical examples for what to do in the face of evil, specifically the evil that he and his disciples were confronted with in his day. And now here's where first century Jewish context becomes critical. Our first example, whoever slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other cheek also. A right cheek slap is very specific. Assuming the slapper is right-handed, it means a backhanded slap across a person's right cheek. This is a sign of domination. It's a slap of dismissal and humiliation that puts the slapper over the victim. You could hit back. That's one possible response. But that would only escalate violence, and it would be likely deadly in the case of their Roman oppressors. Now, cowering back is another option, but that only keeps the unjust system in place and gives the oppressor more power. So Yeshua offers a new way. Stand your ground and offer the left cheek also. This act highlights the injustice of the action while maintaining your own agency, while maintaining your personal dignity, and while displaying courage. The second slap, if it comes, is now your own choice. It's no longer your oppressor's. And this also forces your attacker to strike with an open hand, more as an equal slap. It forces the other person to treat you like a human being and shames the slapper. Yeshua's words may also be drawing from Lamentations 3. Let him offer his cheek to the one who strikes him and be filled with insults, for the Lord will not reject forever. Lamentations is a book lamenting the horrors of the Babylonian siege. In Lamentations, God is saying here, you can turn the other cheek. You can receive insults because of the hope that God will return and deliver one day. This is an action which preserves the things that the bullies of the world seek to take away: your own agency, your humanity, and your faith in God's promises. Next, Yeshua shares another example. And the one wanting to sue you and take your shirt, let him also have your coat. Now this refers not to a shirt like we have, but they didn't wear those back then, but an inner garment. There's an inner garment and then there's an outer garment. And here the setting is probably an unjust court which has demanded the very clothes off your back. That's the inner garment. The Greek word for sue means that the taker is someone in a position of authority taking a poor Jew's clothing, perhaps as a pledge for something else, or perhaps as a punishment. The Torah explicitly forbids this in Exodus. If you have taken your neighbor's outer garment as a pledge, you are to return it to him before the sun goes down, because he might use that as a blanket to sleep in. It might be his only blanket. And then when he cries out to me, I will hear him because I am gracious. So it's against the Torah to take someone's outer garment. Perhaps the oppressor was sort of found a way around this by taking the inner garment instead. Here, again, you're left with two options. To resist would result in arrest. To accept the verdict is to freeze that night. Yeshua's way is shocking. Let him have the outer garment as well. This means to enter the court, to drop not only your inner garment, say, on the floor in front of them, but then also to take off your outer garment and leave that on the floor, standing before the whole court totally naked. You've not just exposed yourself, you have exposed the injustice of the court and embarrassed your oppressor. You have maintained your own agency, trusting in God to provide, and you will have thoroughly humiliated those taking your only clothes. There is nothing passive about this. Yeshua is telling first century Jews under Roman oppression to make a very strong and a witty statement. Yeshua's third example, whoever forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Today we use the phrase, go the extra mile, to mean doing more than what's expected on a project. While that's a good thing, it's a misappropriation of the verse. We know that ancient Roman law would allow for impressment. That meant that a Roman soldier could force any subject of their occupied territories to carry their gear for a Roman mile, which was 1,000 double paces, a few hundred feet shy of our mile today. This was no easy task. A soldier's backpack would routinely weigh around 100 pounds. We see something like this when they forced Simon to carry Yeshua's crossbeam. The same word is used in Greek. Refusing would risk beating. To comply is to be humiliated. Again, Yeshua's way, carry the baggage willingly. But don't stop at the first mile, carry it a second mile of your own volition. To force a person to carry your things makes that person like a pack animal. But to carry the burden willingly, even a second mile, refuses to allow the oppressor to dehumanize you. Your courage, your faith, and your generosity will humiliate him. Yeshua is not teaching complacency and weakness. When resisting would be disastrous and giving in would break their spirit, Yeshua is teaching us how to be creative peacemakers while maintaining our humanity and dignity and honor. Now, to clarify, I don't think this means that it's never right to resist evil. Remember, Yeshua throws over the tables in the temple when he sees injustice. As Rabbi Russ Resnick shares, it is one thing for me to turn my other cheek to the other person who struck me. It's another thing to figuratively turn someone else's cheek by not resisting the evil perpetuated against them. Yeshua is not asking us to sit back and watch evil happen to others for the sake of our own personal piety. Think of the Holocaust, when a response was the only right thing to do. If there's a terrorist attack, it's the right thing to do what it takes to keep others safe. In these passages, Yeshua is talking about our own personal response to offense, our own personal response to humiliation and to oppression. The implications of Yeshua's Torah from the inside out are significant. Though we live in a different time and our circumstances may be different, our mission is to work towards peace wherever we go. Now, in the parenting program that I coach for, we simplify this when we teach kids how to work towards peace when they are wronged or when they are offended, either in family life or out in the world. And there are 3 tools that we share, plus a secret weapon. The 3 tools are, 1, to overlook the insult without becoming bitter. This is in the Proverbs. 2nd, to use your words without being mean. This is in Leviticus, where we're told to confront our brother gently when they sin against us. 3rd, we get help without complaining. And we see this in Matthew 18. Now, these are prerequisites to further conflict resolution. So these are things that are in the Torah, in the Bible, that teach us about how to respond when injustice happens against us. However, when these do not work, or these are not possible, we use our secret weapon here in the Sermon on the Mount. We turn the other cheek. We give our outer garment, or we walk the extra mile. We stand up in the face of injustice that we cannot control. We look for creative solutions to maintain our own agency, our own dignity, and our own humanity while passionately pursuing peace. And then we trust in Yeshua for his blessing and ultimately for his deliverance. This is Yeshua's solution to how to stand up to injustice when there's no other way to resolve the conflict. Romans 12, we read, "Repay no one evil for evil. Give thought to what is good in the eyes of all people. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live in shalom with all people. Never take your own revenge, loved ones, but give room for God's wrath. For it is written, 'Vengeance is mine, I will repay,' says Adonai. Rather, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him a drink. For by doing so, you will heap coals of fire upon his head." And I'll add, maintain your agency, your humanity, and faith in God's promises. As followers of Yeshua, no matter what the time and the circumstances that we're in, from our marriages and families, our communities, our dealings in the world around us, we must be peacemakers for the sake of love.